I try not to think about what's gonna happen to my music in the future. I just try to live in the present, not so much in the past.
I was that typical kid that grew up in the 80s. I basically got sat in front of a TV. It was right when VHS tapes had come out, and I sat down and watched a ton of movies. And I think the one thing that had the greatest impact for me on emotionally watching those films were the scores.
I tend to just make music that I put out so that other people can make it a soundtrack of their own to their own life. Well, this particular track in general, it's kind of the juxtaposition of this kind of more of a cinematic, slower feel, but in a highly intense, kind of hypnotic way of watching the dividing lines on a freeway kind of just pass you by as quick as possible.
My music takes small portions of influences from multiple pieces of the area that I grew up with. Of course, the more emotionally cinematic portion of it comes from my inspiration between film music and stuff, but also a big portion of the techno music that I do is very industrial and minimalist. And I think that is highly inspired by the area that I grew up in.
Everything in the United States that gets imports from China or Taiwan or anything that says made in Taiwan, made in China, anything of that sort, tends to get put on a freight train and come through the city of industry before it gets distributed to the rest of the United States. It's just a vast landscape of industrial buildings. And all these long roads that we have by the train tracks, we just have all these illegal street races. I was kind of just an innocent bystander on the side. I was never really hugely into it, but I do recall being a growing part of the subculture of the area I grew up in. It's easy to watch TV, and TV can, constantly project what Los Angeles is to you. You think of the sunny disposition, the celebrities, the, TMZ running around taking pictures of people, and this kind of fake world that Hollywood tends to, force on it. But I think that the music industry, movie industry, Hollywood in general, doesn't really accurately explain the city in a full, the cultural side of it. Predominantly in the 90s, especially on the West Coast when hip hop and gangster rap was super big, that's pretty much what ruled the streets out here. It felt like every kid that I grew up wanted to be a thug on the streets. And I was like one of the only ones who was completely different. My teenage years, I started to
kind of go out and explore the underground subculture of electronic music, the early rave scenes in the 90s. Being in a city like Los Angeles, where most of the clubs and all the legal nightclubs, so to speak, are taken over by mainstream music because that's what sells and that's what's hot. I think for everybody who come from the underground culture of music, underground electronic music, have to find a place where they can do what they do. And I think where there's a will, there's a way. And those tended to always take place in more vacant industrial warehouse locations. I think that those environments shaped the music that inspired me and the music that I wanted to create. As I grew up and started to appreciate electronic music more and the instruments that made electronic music, you know, modular synthesizers, vintage synthesizers, stuff like that, I started to grow an even deeper sense of appreciation of what went beyond or behind actually creating this music. And I just dived deeper and deeper and deeper into that. In this industry, you tend to get caught up in expectations, and especially people who follow your music are always looking for you to follow up with something that's bigger and better and more innovative than you've done before. And personally, I think I have no intentions of following that kind of, you know, guided pathline. At this particular stage of my life, I have put a lot less thought into the narrative that my music is probably trying to speak, and I'm just getting into the studio and sitting down and just creating whatever comes to my mind first. Going into the studio and writing music heavily is influenced by how I feel at the moment when I walk in. It's hard to convey what you're trying to get across when you're not speaking with words that kind of literally points out poetically whatever thing you're trying to get to. So I think my music sonically is basically just conveying a particular emotion. And I think that the user or the listener, whoever's listening to my music, can perceive that any way they want to. Yeah, I think music is changing dramatically because there's so much of it coming out. There's just a vast amount of music being released. I've kind of moved into this world of the single, where you just hear one track that you like and it ends up in a playlist with a vast amount of other musicians that you listen to. I'm always trying to consciously make an effort to get people to listen to my music from the beginning to the end as an album and not necessarily as one individual track at a time. I try not to think about what's going to happen to my music in the future. I just try to live in the present, not so much in the past. And everything that I do musically kind of just reflects on what's going on now and around me. So